Hey guys, my name's Corey and I wanted to do a video today on how to unbox the machine and get it set up, as well as running your very first load in your freeze dryer. To start off with, we'll do just a couple housekeeping items. One of the main things is just unplugging your machine if you're going to clean it. If you're going to disassemble the tray rack at all or take the tray rack out, you also need to make sure that it's unplugged. You know, if you're going to do anything to your machine besides use it, you probably want it unplugged. So make sure that your voltage is the correct voltage for the machine. Our medium and large are just 120 volt. And the XL and other units may be a different voltage. So just make sure that you have the correct voltage for your machine. But medium and large is always going to be 120. You want to have the machine preferably on a cart or some kind of, I don't know, desk or something like that. But if you are trying to put it on the ground, you do need at least something like this pallet to raise it up off the ground, because the machine needs to drain. And if you are, unless you have a floor drain or something like that, you're usually going to be draining it into a bucket or some kind of catch basin. So if you have zero elevation to your freeze dryer, then you aren't able to drain it at all. Preferably, put it up on a desk or something so we can drain it. But if you absolutely have to put it on the ground, it does need to be off the ground a little bit, like on a pallet. The last housekeeping item that we have is just cleaning the machine. So you will want to clean it with a bleach water solution. There's a lot of recipes out there as far as what dilution you're supposed to go to, but just follow one of those recipes and use bleach water to clean it, and then just rinse it out with water when you're done. Our machines come with a short setup guide, but you do want to look at the full-length manual on our website. You can go to the downloads page on our website, or you can go to this QR code and it will take you to the full-length manual, and it has a lot more information there as far as like how to use the machine and recipes and things. So when it shows up, you will have 3 of these boxes on top of the main box. And these other 3 boxes are the impulse sealer, the vacuum pump, and the accessories box. In order to cut this out, it's pretty simple. So you want to start either at the top or the bottom, and you just grab the plastic and go and cut up. You've got tape here down the sides. You can go ahead and cut the tape. Now that we have every box free on top of the machine, we can go ahead and take these off, set them to the side. The best way to get it out of the box once you're here is you don't want to just lift it out of the box. It's usually easier to cut the box and just bring it out the side. Here in the corner of the box, you don't have any cover or any packaging material. So when you stick your knife in, you're going to be missing any of the important parts, and you're not going to be scratching paint or anything. So what I want to do is I want to take and I want to cut this box all the way down this edge like this. And I want to take and cut this side all the way down this edge like this. And then what I can do, I can take this and I can flop it over and I can just slide my machine right out. A quick side note for damage in shipping. So oftentimes when we have damage in shipping, what happens is there's a fork strike where a forklift driver will just poke the box, and you'll get either 1 or 2 pokes right into the box here. We position the machine inside the box where it's the side panel that gets struck. And if you do find damage in shipping, just give us a call. The side panels take about 4 or 5 minutes to replace, and we'll just send you a new side panel. We don't see it very often, but occasionally we do see fork strikes. So just let us know and we'll help you out on that. Once you have the machine unboxed and you have it sitting on your cart or your desk, you want to go ahead and get all the plastic off of this. And it's the same thing here. You don't want to cut the machine, so you want to be careful about where you cut and how you cut. So as I'm cutting, I'm just going to take and pull away the plastic and then just cut gently. You could also use a pair of scissors for this. Underneath here, you'll have the inspection sheet. So this is all of our quality control documents. You can go and take a look through this, but this essentially just shows, hey, this is what we inspected, this is how we inspected it. We've always got an assembler and then somebody who checks it. So there's always 2 people checking it off, every step of the way. Once you get here, you just unwrap the machine, throw away the plastic. And this is the cover for the machine. So just wiggle it off. You've got more plastic that you got to get through, so we're going to do the same thing. Try not to scratch the machine. You also don't want to cut your hoses, so if you get even just a nick in the hoses, it can cause problems. So we'll come over here. I like to cut down here to this side of the door or the other side of the door, only because there's a little bit more room here and I don't have to worry about cutting the machine as much. Once we get here, you can peel this off the door. You will also want to remove the zip ties at this point. If your tray rack has shifted a little bit in shipping, that's totally fine. These zip ties are only here to kind of help prevent a lot of movement during shipping, but it may still tilt a little bit during shipping, which is totally normal. So in order to remove the zip ties, I'm just going to take this front gasket off, and then I can go ahead and cut these zip ties. So again, a pair of scissors or utility knife, go ahead and take and cut them off. If you leave these zip ties on, it will cause problems with the vacuum. Occasionally we see them left on and it actually gets down to vacuum, which is impressive, but in general, it can cause problems with the vacuum if you leave them there. So once these are cut off, I'm going to go ahead and reinstall the gasket. We're ready to go. I need to get my hoses undone. So if these will pull, you can just go ahead and pull it. But in this case, it's not pulling very easily. So I am going to use a pair of scissors to cut this because I don't want to cut my hoses or even get close to cutting my hoses. If you cut a hose, it can be very difficult to diagnose. So just take a pair of scissors, just cut along here. And then this becomes your drain line, and your vacuum line should be labeled. The vacuum hose is going to be up here in the middle of the machine, and the drain hose is going to be down here lower. There will also not be an outlet on the drain side of the machine. So if for some reason your machine doesn't come with labels on the hoses, that's just a good way of determining where your vacuum hose is and where your drain hose is. So now is a good time to go ahead and set up the vacuum pump. So I'm going to scoot the machine over, open the box. The vacuum pump will come with a little bit of oil. To get this out, I find that the best way to do it is to just take and hold it with my feet and then just lift it out. Then from there, I can take and remove these guys. You also want to remove the plastic bag that's around it. You can watch me struggle with this. One thing that you'll notice on this vacuum pump is that there is no on button. We actually deleted the on button just that way. All you have to do is plug it into the machine and the machine will tell it to turn on and off. If you plug this into the wall, it will run 100% of the time, and that is bad. So make sure that you just plug it into the machine and not into the wall outlet. This vacuum pump can sit above or below the machine. So a lot of people like to put this vacuum pump on a shelf below, or I've seen some people where they put it up above. The vacuum pump can go anywhere. It really doesn't care where it goes. If you'd like to use this spring clamp, you're more than welcome to. It's not needed, but it is just an added feature that we throw in there. So all you have to do is just take and poke this on, and that is set and it won't come off. Once we get to this point, we want to go ahead and fill our vacuum pump up with oil. So to fill it up with oil, I'm going to remove this oil mist filter. And these are plastic threads, so don't twist on these threads too hard. You can cause damage. It doesn't take quite all this bottle. What you want is you want the oil to be filled up to between the minimum and the maximum line. So we usually tell people between 1/3 and a half of the way full. But you'll go ahead and pour the oil into this hole, and at that point, the vacuum pump is ready to go. This vacuum pump oil is simply a break-in oil, and it is not the vacuum pump oil that we recommend for long-term use. For long-term use, we recommend Dairyland oil. Dairyland or Clover Patch oil, they're the same oil, but just branded in different bottles. We found that there's no oil on the market that is clear that is also rust inhibiting. So again, you want to use Dairyland or Clover Patch oil to inhibit any kind of rust from forming inside your pump. You're going to have the longest lifespan if you use either Clover Patch or Dairyland oil. When it comes to oil changes on this vacuum pump, you can do a lot to either hurt the lifespan of your vacuum pump or extend the lifespan of your vacuum pump. I've talked to people who their vacuum pump lasted 6 months, and I've also talked to people who said that their vacuum pump lasted 10 years plus. While you can technically go 20 to 30 loads without changing the oil, what we tell people is you always want to change your oil more often rather than less often. If you're doing things that have a lot of water in them, or if you notice that your vacuum pump is starting to fill with water because you're running really watery items, you definitely want to change your oil at that point. It's just always better to change the oil more often rather than less often, and we recommend somewhere between 5 to 10 loads. If you do it more often than that, that is totally fine, and you also don't have to throw away your oil. You can go ahead and take this oil out and you can filter it in something like a Brita water filter, and then you can reuse it in your machine. We still recommend that if you're changing your oil every 5 loads, that you throw away the oil after 20 cycles or after 4 change outs. So if you have filtered your oil 4 times, just go ahead and throw it away. It's garbage oil at that point. To properly dispose of this oil, all you have to do is make sure that there's no water in it, and you can take it to an O'Reilly's or an AutoZone, and they will take used oil for you. Once we've got the vacuum pump ready to go, we are going to just screw this back on. And again, you don't want to kill it. You don't want to like over tighten it. Just take until it's snug, or tighten it until it's snug, and it should be good. In order to change the oil, all you do is you take this out, and there's actually a port underneath of this. Bring this to the edge of whatever I'm changing it on. I'll take and put a cup underneath of this, unscrew that, and it will drain out that port. The last thing when it comes to the vacuum pump is something called gas ballast valve. We tell most people is, hey, just keep it closed all the time. You're not gonna hurt anything by keeping it closed. But if you do want to cycle water through the oil a little bit better, you can open this during the cycles. Once the machine goes from atmosphere to vacuum, you can go ahead and open this and it won't spit any oil as long as the machine is at vacuum. I like to do that just to help kind of cycle oil or cycle water through my oil, but it's definitely not needed to run the gas ballast valve. If you're confused on that, just keep it closed all the time. We are just about ready to start the machine, but we do need to get our power cord out of the accessories box, as well as our trays and mats. I don't want to cut very deep into this box. If I cut this oxygen absorber pack, if I nicked the pack and then didn't realize, all those oxygen absorbers are gonna go bad. In here, you've got the tool for changing the oil on the vacuum pump, bag of candy as your first load. So we usually just send Nerd Clusters, but sometimes it's Skittles or something else. And then you've got some oxygen absorbers, Mylar bags. What I'm really looking for right now though, to get my first load going, are these trays and mats. So I'll take out one tray, one mat, as well as the power cord. We'll take this candy as well. Undo this and I can plug my machine in. So here in the back, we've got a power plug-in, and you want to make sure that this is driven all the way in. Sometimes it can be kind of hard and it kind of sticks out. So if you only drive it in halfway, there's a good chance that the machine won't turn on. So you want to make sure to push it in all the way, and then I'm going to plug my machine in and then go ahead and turn it into the on position. If you use your machine on a GFCI outlet, you want to make sure that that GFCI is as close to the panel as possible and that it has good grounding. One thing that can happen with GFCIs is that you can get what's called nuisance tripping. The GFCI is very sensitive when it comes to grounding, and sometimes inductive motors like in a freeze dryer or in like power tools causes just enough grounding to trip that GFCI, but it won't trip the breaker. Breakers are much more resilient to grounding issues like in a motor or in a tool. Just keep that in mind when you're plugging in your machine and where you decide to choose to plug it in at. Once you have the machine on, you are ready for your first load. And your first load can either be candy or it could be bread. There are other companies that recommend doing a bread load. We don't necessarily recommend a bread load. You can do it if you'd like, but it's not needed in our machine. The reason that it's not needed in our machine is because we do 4 to 4.5 hours of testing before the machine gets shipped out. There are other companies that are not doing that testing, and they're not vacuum degassing the plastics that are in here. So in our testing, we are vacuum degassing the plastics. So again, you don't need the bread load. You can go right into your first load if you'd like. Whether you do candy or bread for your first load, go ahead and run either one on candy mode, because what it does is it gets you familiar with the machine, and it's a very short cycle. So I'll show you how that's done. You come here to recipes and click on recipes. And then this first one right here is candy. So go ahead and click on candy. It's going to tell you the recipe. It's a 2-hour recipe. And you go ahead and hit continue. It's going to remind you to close the drain valve and close the door. So this is how you close the drain valve. You want to take and turn it 90 degrees. If you keep it in this position, this is the open position. And what'll happen is you will continually suck air through this, and you'll get a vacuum error on your machine. Once it prompts you to close the door, close the drain valve, make sure that this drain valve is in this position and you're good to go. Do not use the pre-warm setting for candy unless you're doing a very hard candy. The machine comes with either Skittles or Nerd Clusters. Those are too soft for the pre-warm setting. What the pre-warm setting does is it warms up the candy ahead of time and then pulls it under vacuum. And because you're warming it up ahead of time and then pulling vacuum, you get a lot more puff and expansion in that candy. Don't use the pre-warm setting on candy unless you're doing things like lemon heads, hot tamales are another one. But in general, just don't use pre-warm on most candies. Otherwise you could make a mess of the machine. So in this case, I'm going to hit no, and then it's going to go ahead and start the refrigeration and cool down the chamber. And then while it's cooling down, I could go ahead and put my food in. You also want to take your candy and space it out on the trays a little bit because again, these little nerd clusters are going to puff up to about that big. I'm showing this with all this wrapped up still. You obviously don't want to put this in the machine when it's not opened or with these wrapped. You want to take and unwrap all of this, but I'm just kind of showing this for demonstration purposes. So I'm going to go ahead and put this in the machine. We can go ahead and close it. Once I get to this point, the machine knows how to do the rest. So all I have to do is just let it sit and it'll do the rest on its own. Just as a reminder, there is the full-length manual on our website, and you can get there either from our website or the QR code that's in the setup guide. But if you follow these instructions, you should be freeze drying in no time. And if you do have questions, go ahead and give us a call. We'll be happy to answer any questions for you.